Welcome back to Those Are My Thoughts podcast, where we share our thoughts on popular fantasy reads. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Jillian. And today is our part one of reading One Dark Window, which is in the Shepherd King series by Rachel Gillig. I'm so excited to be covering this book. I don't know why it feels like a little bit of a departure. I know we're still reading fantasy, but a little bit of a departure from what we have
Fae.
been reading in the Fae world, or like even vampire world, where there's not like a different species here. We're still talking about humans who gain magic through something else. They're very mortal. There's not like special powers in a normal person. Like they heal at a normal rate and all the things. And I feel like we're not used to that. And so it feels like a little bit of a departure. And also because it is low on the spice level for a book that we typically read, which not that we get a ton of spice in the first half of our first book anyway or anything like that, but I'm pretty sure the entire series is lower on the spice level than we normally read.
I will say I didn't look up for book 2. I only looked up the rating for
Okay.
book 1, and book 1 is what told me like
Okay.
lower spice level. However, you might have been heading this direction, but what I'm thinking is it's okay. Like this is the
Yes.
first book where I'm like, that's totally fine. Their chemistry on page is still top par. It's still like making me giggle. I'm loving their banter. It's so good.
Okay, before we keep going, let's just say up front, this part 1 of this series is through chapter 20 of this book. So only spoilers through chapter 20, no spoilers for the rest of the series, no spoilers for anything else. We haven't been looking up information about this. So this is our raw reaction to the first 20 chapters of this book with no other information involved. So if you're looking for a deep dive, you're not getting it here. If you're looking for a read along, you can come along with us. We're going to talk through our thoughts on the first half of the book, maybe some predictions for the second half of the book, or wonders, wishes, worries for the second half of the book. That's the only spoilers you're going to get in this book. And then next episode, we'll talk through some more, the rest of the series, because we're about 57% of the way through right now. So we've gotten through a lot of plot, but the really crazy stuff hasn't happened yet. So I think that'll be in the next half of the book. And then we'll have one more episode where we'll go through our voice notes and our ratings and final things like that. So you should be looking forward to 3 episodes on this book, The One Dark Window. But yeah, I'm excited that we're covering this book. I feel like it's
Me
been on our
too.
TBR for a while.
I don't even know who recommended it to me or if it was you telling me.
Yeah, I mean, it's been all over my TikTok, so that's probably where I got this book.
It's not in my algorithm, so
Okay, so it's been on my TBR for a while then, and I just forced Sarah to read whatever I want, so.
that's correct. And I say yes.
You say, okay. So what do you think so far?
Okay, honestly, I feel like I say this about every book in the beginning, but take it all away. I'm only talking about One Dark Window. I am loving it so much. Why are you laughing?
Because I actually think it's funny how many times so far we've gone like, I never get into books this fast. Like, and it's like every time we're like, I'm surprised. I love it. Like every time we say we love it and we're surprised that we love it. Like we didn't
So
read a million
funny.
recommendations for this book already. Like, I can't believe we like this book. No, we didn't pick it off a shelf, you know?
Why do we sound like old ladies in your head? I can't believe.
Okay, I live in the South, so
That's
I
true.
feel like
that's
whenever
true.
I do like a impression, it's always some Southern lady. It's like,
It is so funny.
anyway,
Jillian's in Tennessee. I'm in Arizona.
yeah, we're long distance friends.
Long distance book friends. Okay, so no, I'm loving this book, and I promise it is the first time that I have said this before getting to page 100. So it was page 32, 35 that both
Yeah.
of you and I messaged each other and were like, I'm loving this book. I was just instantly enchanted, I think. I've never read a book by Rachel before. For this being my introduction to her, like she's got me. I would love to read everything that she's written so far. Now we're only at chapter 20, which
Yeah, I
is
would chill out till we see how she finishes the rest of the series.
how does she do an ending? We don't know.
We don't.
Chapter 20 is about like 57% of the book done, so she's got me.
I think too, part of it is I really like the world building is really easy to understand. We're not complicated. There's not even a map to this book, which
Yeah.
is unusual for a fantasy series. But I think because at least so far, I'm curious to see if there's a map in the next book because so far we're in literally 3 places we've been in so far. So it's really easy to understand like where we're going. And because this book has like the mist that like keeps everybody in, there's not a lot of world building. They're kind of like, I don't know if you picture almost like a horror movie where they can't leave, you know what I mean? Like
I've pictured a horror movie a couple times in this
do you
book.
remember the movie like The Others or whatever where she lives in her house and she's a ghost, but it's Nicole Kidman and
I haven't
her
seen it.
house is surrounded by mist and she can't get
Ooh.
past it. She never leaves her house because she can't see anything further. Anyway, it reminds me of very horror movie esque ness. But as we've spent some time in the mist later in the book, it kind of can be like that. Like if somebody doesn't have a charm with them or whatever, like that part was really scary with Jesper.
I voice noted to you maybe today about it, where I was like, when I was reading the part, which is closer to chapter 20, it might be chapter 20. No, it's chapter 19,
19.
where Jesper, the sister, walks into the woods or runs and she has dropped her charm. The spirit of the wood is essentially like beginning to take over. Sounds like a
She's like going
possession, honestly.
crazy.
Yeah.
Yes.
The part that freaked me out the most is how she's talking to Elspeth and it's not her. So I picture her like, when somebody's in distress, so their face is all scrunched up. I picture her kind of like going peaceful and kind of with a smile on
Scary,
her face.
scary,
Like,
scary,
ah, no,
scary.
I know.
That was definitely the most horror movie part of this series so far. But I do love it. And I feel like the big part of this book so far, right, is the nightmare, I think, is the like big question mark of this book. Who is the nightmare? Why is he in her head? Is her magic what she thinks it is, which I don't think it is? Then obviously I think she keeps finding out like this person's affected and this person's affected. I feel like everybody's affected. Like everyone's
So
pretending
at the
like they aren't.
beginning, it was like it was like gonna be so rare, and then
Like, she's hid it for 11 years. I can't believe she
I
did. And it's like,
know.
no, like literally everybody's been hiding and actually they don't care.
Which is really funny because really early on in the book, you find out a couple chapters later, but I said to you, what's his name? Emery?
Yeah, Emery.
Raven's brother, Emery Yu. I love the last name Yu. It's really fun to say.
You.
Emery Yu. When he finds her on the steps and he grabs her, and it almost kind of feels like he's about to assault her. So then I voice note you and I'm like, hey, because of that scene, I really think he's infected.
I thought the same thing
2
immediately.
pages later, you find out.
Yeah, I thought the same thing immediately. I was like, something's not right with this guy. The big thing that was the giveaway on the steps was that he started saying stuff like, I see you, blah, blah, blah. Like he started saying things like that. And to me, it was like a million alarm bells going off. Like, this is weird. Yeah, I thought the same thing.
My first impression of the book, reading one chapter, was I thought for a moment maybe we would have a retelling or a spin-off of a Cinderella story because of
Yes.
having this, what feels like an evil stepmom, and then two half sisters. Are they twins? I could just be making that up. That being said, right away, I was like, ooh, Cinderella. But it hasn't really come up again.
No, and her relationship with the stepsisters is really interesting to me. She has a horrible relationship with her stepmom and a very weird relationship with her dad. And then she has these relationships with her stepsisters, which is like they like her. I also have no loyalty to her, so they'd be quick to throw her under the bus. When she's got tea for them, they're like, "Oh yeah, I want to know, blah blah blah." Like they wanted to hear all
Exactly.
about all the maiden cards, yada yada. But I think the moment something went wrong, they would throw her under the bus. But her dad and her relationship is really strange because it's like he cares about her, but he also exiled her. Okay, tell me how you say the word for what Raven is the captain of. Desk dryers?
Oh, God.
It's desk dryers.
Most recently, she said, like, I don't think you're a destroyer anymore. I think you're a highwayman. And I was like, much easier to say. Let's go with that.
I don't know where I was going with that.
The dad.
Oh, because the dad was the captain of the desk dryers, and so he had to like exile her because he couldn't like protect her essentially. which is then like odd because now Raven is, and he's
Ooh,
also
I
that.
didn't see that connection. You're totally right. Yeah, something's up with Dad. Honestly, like, we're at chapter 20, so I think we're about to find out so many things. Something's up with Dad. I think there's something about him we don't know. Is it for good or is it for bad? Not sure yet. Also, Uncle is still alive. I feel like we're gonna come back to that and Uncle's gonna
Oh,
die
the
or something.
most surprising part of this was the Ione switch up, and I don't know why I'm still so shocked by it. I'm hurt for Elspeth. Like, that
I know
sucks.
you are.
I hate that. Like, you don't feel the same way. Like, I really feel like it is such a betrayal. These two have grown up together. They've been best friends for forever. She's lived with them for the last 11 years. They've done everything together. And before then, like, all of her stories from her childhood are like her mom and her aunt and her like listening to them tell stories. Like, so like to me, the whole situation with her even getting to the maiden card, to me, it's like something's up with the uncle getting her there. Like, that felt like don't you think like almost like a Scythe card? Like, she was kind of like under the influence, somebody being like, no, this is what you should do kind of situation.
Yes.
Like, she was having that conversation with Elspeth and she was like, you're so negative. You don't think anybody can be good. Like, maybe he can be good. And she's like, okay, like, no. They grew up knowing the same things. So it's to me like her dad saving that nightmare card to pawn his daughter off is like so icky.
Absolutely.
I don't know.
There's a couple times that the aunt and the uncle are talked about, and they are talked about in complete opposite ways. So it's like
Yes.
Elspeth talks about the aunt, like, "No, my aunt did this, like, she didn't even care about the money. My uncle's the one that cares about the money," or something.
Something's up with the uncle. The aunt seems
Yeah.
like a doll. Like, every
Yeah.
time she sees her, she's like, "Oh, I find my aunt. She gives me the biggest hug I've ever had in my life." Like, every time she sees her, it's like the best moment, like a mom's hug.
How did the uncle come across a card? All she remembers is the bloodied swords.
And
So,
why?
does uncle have like, something he's hiding? Is he a man of secrets? Obviously, I think he is. He's hiding something, but does aunt know?
I think we're meant to be like, look over here, like the Rowans are awful and Ione is the one who betrayed her. And it's like, I don't think it was Ione's fault. I would predict that Ione is going to come back around.
Okay, I think it's only one or the other. I think she comes back around or she dies. So
Oh my God.
I really hope that she comes back. I don't see the story going a different way. It's either going to be a tragic thing that gets us emotionally involved with our main character, or
So that's a good question. Up front, we don't know anything about this author. This is our first time reading this author. So I think even starting this book, we didn't know it was like lower on the spice scale, which we're both fine with. And like I said, neither of us are missing that at this moment.
yeah.
I wonder if we'll miss it later if the plot isn't carrying what it needs to, because I do find myself in some books like a little smut gets me to the
Oh,
next section.
absolutely.
And I don't know if I'm going to struggle. But maybe if it's like even softly, like I'm good with that. Like moments or sweet moments, I'm fine with that. It doesn't have to be like smut. You know what I mean?
My you said doesn't have to be smart. My question to you was going to be, have you needed it so far? Have you had a
No.
moment so far where you're like, "Nothing's bringing me along?"
No, but I don't think I miss it in this part of the book of any of the books. Like, we're too early for me to miss it. Like, it's so early. Like, we're still barely building banter with them. I don't want
Okay,
it now. I'm wondering if, like, next book, it'll feel like it's missing. Like, if their relationship gets down the line and I don't feel
w
like there's any kind of,
yeah. Do you wanna know the spice level? Because that's what I'm looking up.
yeah, I do.
Okay, it's basically the same as book number 1.
Okay.
So it says mild to moderate.
Oh, okay. Mild to moderate isn't none.
It's not silver flames.
Okay. Silver Flames, there's a chunk in the middle
Silver
where
flames
you're
is
going.
beyond.
For plot or for sex sake. And yeah, I don't think we're gonna miss the spice in this book at all, but I'm worried we might miss it next book. But I think there's a chance this author could surprise me. All that to say, we haven't not read this author before. We don't know, do people die? Are there mates? What's this like? We don't know this side of fantasy here. So part of that's exciting to learn. I want to be surprised. Like, if she kills somebody off, I'll be shocked. You know what I mean? Like, it'll
Yeah.
really shock me because I think I'm almost expecting most authors, especially in like book 1, be killing people.
I don't know. I think every time that I've read a different different book and been shocked by it. Now I'm so guarded of like, someone's dying, someone's gonna die. But I had more thoughts on the cousin, Ione, if we're saying that right.
I looked it up.
Oh, good job. For other words that we might say, we should say that we are not listening to this book on audiobooks. So Jillian and I, that we're obviously first-time readers of this book. We're making it up until we finish so we don't look up any spoilers for ourselves, and we'll correct ourselves later.
So far, I found most of the names in this book to be very easy to know how to
Like
pronounce.
phonetically.
Elm, Raven, Elspeth, like I just don't feel like they've been hard.
I agree.
Ione was the harder one, and so I looked that up. Everything else I don't feel like has been tough.
So my thoughts for Ione. You immediately, when the maiden card got introduced, immediately messaged me and you're like, do you think she was under the influence of the Scythe card? So it wasn't my first thought, but obviously now I'm thinking about it. The part where I got that thought is closer to chapter 20 when she comes to visit at Castle U. Everything with her in that scene, I'm like, you are being controlled by somebody else. You're not yourself.
So weird. I was trying to think. There's so many cards and so many like it's hard to keep track which card does what right now. Like I need a key that says like, and I
Yeah.
know there's like a couple chapters with it at the beginning, but like I need one at the front or back that says
Like a
like this is what
glossary.
each card means. I was trying to think like the maiden card. I know it makes people act differently. Like the side effect is heartlessness or whatever, so it being cold and stuff. But she's barely been using this.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a slow effect. The way she's acting would be like it's taken over her completely already.
Yeah, and the way that she was like ignoring anything that's gone wrong with Elspeth. Like I said, the person she grew up with.
Yeah.
Like to me, it's red flags all over the place. Like something else is going on with Ione. Like I don't think she's gonna die. Like I think that's gonna get brought back around potentially, and she'll join them. I don't know.
I hope so. What do you think about Raven and his magic? Is he hiding more magic? Does
Yes.
he have something like the nightmare in him?
Yeah, the way that he describes, oh, there's something about you that like feels familiar, blah, blah, blah. Like, I think there is something more to his magic. So none of the cards affect him. We've talked about who is the Shepherd King and is the Shepherd King going to become an actual character in this book? Like right now, it's like, oh yeah, the Shepherd King started this all. That was forever ago kind of vibe. Then we have two people I'm suspicious of, which is the Nightmare and Raven. And I told you this in a voice note, but I think Raven is a descendant of the Shepherd King.
Yeah, you have that prediction. I don't see it, but I'm listening to you.
On Castle U's property is something to do with the Shepherd King, that window.
You remember it that way. I remember the window being about the spirit in the of the woods, which I guess when she comes up, the Shepherd King comes up.
Right? Isn't that what happened? Ignore me. Anyway, well, the other part of it was like, I'm convinced that the Nightmare is the Shepherd King. We know this. I don't know if I'm right or not, but I think at this point I'm willing to die on the hill that I think that the Nightmare is the Shepherd King. The question is, why is he in Elspeth? Why did it happen when she touched the Nightmare card? Why does she have a creature inside of her? And or the Shepherd King, because I'm convinced.
The book wants us to think right now that any card she touches, she absorbs the power.
I'm not believing that for a second.
Yeah,
A
I
second, I'm
just
not
don't
believing that. She's
believe
never
it.
tested that theory. There's no other card she's touched. If she touched one more card, and it happened with that card too, but she touched one card and she thinks she absorbed the card, which is why she calls the thing in her brain the Nightmare. That's not his name.
Ooh, she gave him that name.
Yes.
Oh.
He's like
I
not
see.
correcting her, and he's like got his own secrets going on, and she makes all these comments about like, I barely know anything about this thing. He's been with me for 11 years and like he's got all these secrets. It's like,
Okay, so this leads into my prediction. So you think the Nightmare is the Shepherd King?
Yeah.
This is probably a lesser scale prediction, but I think that currently the Nightmare is almost like overtaking her. And pretty soon they're going to bleed together, and she is either going to lose control of herself or lose the ability to make choices. She'll be there, but maybe they'll kind of switch roles. Like she'll be caged in the back of her mind, the Nightmare will take over. And I think either this book or next book, we basically have to have like an exorcist and they have to be separated. That's what that is. No?
I agree with you. I think that she is using the magic too much now and that it's going to have consequences like deterioration separation consequences. Like every time she uses it, it's going to end up kind of furthering whatever happens when you use magic all the time. I don't know if I would guess that she's going to get like caged in the back of her mind, but I do think something is going to happen, like with her using him this much. If that's like he takes over more and more and more, or if she's asking him to kind of take over more, or maybe like you said, like she's going to be like switch roles with the nightmare. The question is, does he want that?
Yeah, what is the nightmare's intention?
If we're thinking about the last dream we just read, there have been 2 dreams so far, both with that knight,
Yeah.
the shepherd king. I'm convinced. But the knight that like is the nightmare, because the first time that she meets him, his eyes hit her and they're yellow eyes. And then he like switches the room and she sees a beast instead. Like he's hiding who he is. And then the second time we meet him, he says, "Get me out of here, Elspeth. Get me out." I feel like for some reason he's stuck in her brain. He wants to be elsewhere, but I can't figure. I don't know. I think whatever she does with the rest of this book, it's going to shock me because I'm not 100% sure where this is going. Like, what does the nightmare want? How does she get him inside? Why her? Like, I think there's a lot of those questions. Like, are we going to find out like she was actually like the most powerful descendant of whatever, like kind of situation? Like, why her is what I want to
Well,
know.
so immediately when we heard her say, "No, I don't touch any of the cards because I absorb the powers," immediately you and I were like, "Okay, there's going to be a moment where you're becoming the all-powerful."
Yes,
Right? Because that's a
yes.
pretty common theme in fantasy. Immediately, you and I were like, okay, is this the direction it's going? Like, she's going to absorb all of the cards? I guess a couple things that are open plot wise is like the main thing would be that they're trying to free Blunder of the mist.
Do you think that's going to happen in this book?
Feels too soon, so maybe book number 2. Because you take that unless you open up a new big bad in this book.
Think it could be either next book, but I think if it does happen this book, that it's actually not going to do what they think it's going to do. They
Oh,
think it's
sure,
going to
sure,
get rid
sure.
of everything, and it won't. It will open
It'll
up a
make it
different.
worse. Yeah, I could see that. It'll make it worse, or maybe the spirit of the wood, like, because they said the spirit of the wood was once good, was once beautiful, but it's been deprived so long, so now it's evil. Again, another book reminded me of Moana.
I was just going to say that. I was literally going to say that.
That's so funny.
What I think is weird about like their task, if you will, is that it is they only have a couple. We started the task only needing a few cards. So I guess when I read the back of the book
Oh.
initially, I thought it was going to be this big grand adventure to find all the cards. And they already had almost all of them. They just needed like 3 of the
Okay,
12.
but we're 57% of the book done. They only have collected the one of the 3 that they're missing?
Okay, so they need 2. We already found out who has the other one they need, which is her father.
Yeah.
Has the well. And
So that'll be the next adventure.
that'll be the next. And then it's the one that nobody has ever found.
Which is gonna be in one of them or something. Or it's like with Raven or
The twin alders.
I keep trying to foreshadow the next book is called Two Twisted Crowns. I keep trying to like look for that in the book. I'm like two twisted what? But then Two Twisted Crowns it's most likely Elspeth and Raven, right? Aren't they both like an heir? Like her dad is a king and she's his firstborn. Is he not a king? What is her dad?
He was the captain of the Destroyers. There's one king.
But he lives in a castle.
They all live in a castle. It's like they're like the big families. So like
Okay.
Castle U, Castle Spindle, whatever.
His father's not a king or anything? Just checking before I continue down this theory.
No, I don't think so. There's one king. It's the King Rowan and the Rowans that are like future kings, like the heirs to the throne.
Well, my theory was going to be that Two Twisted Crowns means Elspeth and Raven. Never mind.
I don't think so. I don't know what it means though. Do we want to talk about the love story? She meets Raven because he puts a knife to her throat initially, which
Oh,
you
God.
thought, you were like, what, he saved her? And I was like, what, he saved her? I was so
Okay, this is a
confused.
prime example of when I start a new book, I'm like waiting for it to captivate me because I can get bored pretty quick. And so in the beginning of books, typically I'm skimming over a lot until I'm hooked. And that was one of the things where I was like, yeah, 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 somebody's robbing her. Okay, she's still alive, whatever. Well, there was very important details there that I should not have skimmed over. But what
Yeah,
did
you caught the freaking scent though, which I was like,
because every single freaking time in a fantasy book, when they describe a scent, they're describing the love
I know.
interest. So I'm like, ooh, first time we're talking about scent on book. Who is it? And it's like clover and leather or something. And then it comes up again, and I'm like, oh, there's a guy. There he is. And you're like, yeah, he tried to kill her. And I was like, oh, I don't remember that.
You're like, oh my God, he's saving her again. I was like, saving her again? Oh, so
I
you
made
mean
up a whole story in my brain.
I had to literally flip back because I was like, did I literally miss part of the story? So we meet him, then he like takes her back to his room after he finds her in the mist or whatever after
Which we find out that he loves books. He's messy. He has books everywhere.
relatable, this man. Light skin, dark hair. I feel like I can't picture this man though. He's got like
There was some description about, like, him being much larger than her. That's all I
oh, I
remember.
know I was picturing him like 6'5".
Yeah, that sounds right.
He towered over her at one point when she was like trying to stand up to him.
Have we really gotten a description of her?
She's blonde. Is she?
What?
Wait, no, she's not. Wait, cut that out. Cut that out. Ione is blonde though. That's why I was going there. Yeah, no, I mean I'm horrible at remembering people's appearances,
Me too.
honestly.
So, sadly, right now in my brain, they're both white with dark hair.
The thing I like about this male character so far is that he's very reassuring with her considering all of the like secrets, but I like that he sees that moment between her and her mother-in-law and
Stepmom.
he lets her do her thing and then afterwards was like, yeah, you did great. That was really good. I just loved that moment. Like I feel like I would want that if I were in the same position. I would want somebody to be like, yeah, you freaking killed her. Like good job, you know?
He was on her side
He
immediately.
totally was. He was like, yeah, she sucks.
But it's stepmom, not mother-in-law.
You know
I
what I
tried correcting you,
meant.
but you were on your journey.
Don't interrupt me. But yeah, I like how he is with her right now and I feel like the banter is just getting going. The trope, the pretend, oh, we'll pretend to be courting each other, but we're like actually falling in love and all these like moments of like, my cheeks were heating and he's touching my hips and blah blah blah.
I love in any book when the man is interested first. He's totally into her before she's kind of decided anything in her brain. He's like, she catches him blushing multiple times.
Hands down favorite moment in this book so far is when they're like in the study and Ione's there and they both are hating their life and she looks over at him and she's like, he looks like a little boy, like so bored and annoyed.
Yeah.
And then he catches her eye and he lights up, a smile tugs at his lips or whatever. You see your crush looking at you from across the room and it's just like, oh my God, she's looking at me. Like it's this whole,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. Yeah.
so cute.
I
Like,
think it's the most relatable moment so far because
mhm.
if you've ever had a crush, you've had that moment where all you're looking for is their eye contact and literally the world
Mhm.
falls away. And she does. She misses them talking to her and she's like, "What? What? What?"
I have loved actually a lot of their little moments. Like I'm really loving them as a couple. I don't know how I feel. I don't really feel any type of way towards him as like a book boyfriend that like I would really like love so far. But I love them as a couple. I love like how she's like, I'm gonna go hide in the mist and try to like avoid him. And he's like immediately like, I found you.
Found you. This is exactly where I would hide.
She's like, oh God. And then she falls asleep on his back on the way back from
The heist.
which I felt was like she was so exhausted and comfortable with him. And she even says like the nightmare is almost non-existent when he's around. She can like actually calm down for once.
Which is so interesting. Which normally I'd be like mates connection, but I really don't think we're gonna get mates
I
in
don't
this
think we're getting mates in
world.
this book.
But something about him calms the nightmare. Interesting. There were so many things in the like at the card heist when they were trying to find, was it the well?
No, the Iron Gate.
First of all, a lot of their, not banter, but a lot of their chemistry picks up because they have so many moments of like needing to rely on each other, like checking in on each other's well being. I love those moments.
Before you keep going, He asks her permission every time before he touches her. I think at some point she's gonna be like, "Stop asking me, just touch me," you know? But I do think, like, at the beginning of, like, you don't even know this person. I love how he's, like, so respectful, like, to the point where she's like, "Stop saying Miss Spindle, like, just say Elspeth," and then but he's always, like, overly respectful. He's like, May I touch you? Are you okay? I'm looking you over. I'm wondering what happened." Like, he's just so aware of everything she's got going on, and I love that.
I love it, I love it, I love it. I also love that it was perfectly timed by the author that the moment that I was getting annoyed at him saying, Miss Spindle," I'm like, "We're not in Bridgerton. We are in a fantasy romance book." Finally, she's like, "All right, promise me one thing. Stop calling me Miss Spindle." Thank the Lord. I loved the timing. There are so many things in the carriage ride that just brought up theories where I'm like, what is this about the nightmare? What is her father was there? Which I guess kind of makes sense. Like he's escorting the guy away from the castle. I don't know.
Along these lines, what are your thoughts on Elm?
Okay, I think I'm confused at who he is because even on Rachel's Instagram page, he's a really big character. And I'm like, is Elm, he's a part of Raymond's crew?
Yes, he is a part of the Band of Ravens crew, but he is Hoth's brother. He is an heir to the Rowan throne.
Oh, okay, okay. Is he the one that always carries the Scythe card, the red?
He does because only Rowans have Scythe cards.
Okay, I remember the scenes with him now.
Hoth has a Scythe card. The king has a Scythe card. They have, I think there's 6 of them, and all Rowans have the Scythe card. Nobody else has one. He's supposed to be like a brute, like all the other Rowans, but also, like, I want him to be like different than all the other ones. And I know, like, they're leaning him to be like kind of a dick. I'm wondering if next book is about Elm because you're saying he's a main character on
I
hers.
don't know, he was just kind of front and center in the fan art, which tells me he's very important.
Yeah. Okay. I was just trying to figure out if I think he's actually good or bad because he's a dick, kind of.
No, he is.
I'm like, we're supposed to like this guy because he's with everybody else, but I don't. Like, I thought at first, like, he was gonna be that kind of guy who like was asshole presenting, and then you're like, oh, but he's really like a softie. And I'm like, I think he's kind of a dick.
That's where I still was. I was still in this space of like, oh, you're gonna be like dude best friend that's kind of hitting you, kind of giving you a hard time, but actually loves you?
He's not giving me that vibe right now. The moment that they're coming back from the heist and she's like going to ride on his horse again, and Raven's like, "Oh no, I got it. Like, I'll give you a break." And he's like, "Oh yeah, perfect. I don't want to see her again." And like gets on his horse and like rides away.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm like, okay.
He's also the one that, like, he comes and interrupts when Ione is visiting in the tea room or whatever. He, like, pokes his head in and he says something. I don't know, I guess there's just, like, a question mark on him.
He was part of the heist scenario that I was thinking about, especially because his brother was there, and I was just thinking, like, I wonder if there's anything to like be worried about with him. Yeah, because at the heist, so her dad is fighting with Elm, and then where she runs into him, and then he's fighting with Elm, and then she gets into it with her dad, and they're like, I don't think, I'm sorry, but these like flimsy masks cannot be that good. Like, people have to know.
Literally, I thought the same thing.
She's like, he didn't know who I was. I'm like, did he not? He's your father.
Okay, but I thought that was more of a tell on page of, like, because her face looked like the nightmare.
Oh,
I didn't think it was because, "Oh, I have a mask on, he can't see who I am."
he saw her and then she flipped around and like changed into the nightmare. Like, it was before, she wasn't the nightmare before he saw her the first time.
Then I don't know. What are you thinking about, the character Jesper, the sister?
I like her.
I like her too, I like her a lot. I think she'll be, like, our best friend on page.
I think so too. I like her a lot. I think she like shows up for Elspeth. There's that crazy moment of her that we already talked about in the woods. That's like horror movie-esque.
Yeah.
But I think that was a bonding moment for them too. And like the way that she like frantically found help for her, like you could tell she already feels a bond with Jesper because of how she reacted, you know, when that happened. And how I felt the same way. Like I was like, oh my God, are they gonna kill her off right now? Like I was scared. Were you not?
No, I did think that she was getting killed off, but I didn't feel big emotions about it yet. I think I
I
felt
mean, I wouldn't have cried, but I was surprised.
I like how the author did it because I think I felt bigger emotions seeing Raven take care of his sister.
Yeah.
If she would have died, I would have been like, all right, what's going to happen next? But seeing that side of him, I was like, oh, love this. It's really interesting. What's your predictions for this second half and how this book is going to end?
Oh Oh my gosh. Okay. We've talked about quite a few already. I think I'll stick with I think they are going to either get all the cards or like something's going to happen with the nightmare, which I think is the Shepherd King. And I think that's how they are going to find the twin elders by having the Shepherd King knowing where it is. Like, I think the nightmare knows where the twin elders card is.
Oh, I think so too.
So I think that he's going to lead them to that card. But I think that when they lift the mist, there's a bigger, worse situation happening. That's my
Okay.
prediction.
I think this book will end on a cliffhanger. It's a duology. I guess right now I'm feeling like I think that they will collect all the cards, but I think that Elspeth is like, I think this book ends with her not being herself and her needing external help to get rid of the nightmare.
Or they collect all the cards and then someone else gets their hands on them and uses it against them or something like that.
But it also makes a lot of sense to like perform the ritual now. So, as much as I want to make a prediction, I just don't think that we have the answer yet of what is coming. I think that there's a big plot hole that's going to open up that we don't even know anything about yet that's going to end this book.
So excited to keep reading after we get done with this recording. I do feel like we're at such a juicy place right now that I don't want to put the book down. I can see us finishing this book in the next 3 days.
Depends on you. I'll be fast. I'm loving this book.
I don't really have anything else going on the next few days. Like, I got to make cookies, but that's really it. So, and then I'm going to really dive into my fourth wing reread in preparation of Onyx Storm coming out at the end of January. I think that's like the biggest thing in the book community happening. Like, if Sarah J. Maas announced ACOTAR 6, then maybe that would be the other
I think
big
it would
thing.
be competing. I don't think it would take over.
I don't either,
Storm.
because people are saying that she keeps dropping hints about spring, like it's just going to come out in spring, like just
ACOTAR
surprise
6?
us. People think she's going to surprise us with a late.
Did you see ACOTAR is about to have its 10-year? I think 10-year anniversary. And so she is re-recording all the audiobooks.
I did see. You know how I feel.
I know, like, I'm not excited about it, but it made me think, oh, the 10-year anniversary is coming up. Surely we're getting a release of something else from you, please.
People think it's going to be like a Beyonce moment, like it's dropping tomorrow. Like kind of, she said this next book is her longest. And think about how long Silver Flames was.
Flames. Dear Lord.
Think about how long Crescent Cities were. Like, seriously, it's going to be, she's like, it's a big one. Anyway, enough about Sarah J. Maas.
Next episode following this one will be One Dark Window Part 2, which means we will have finished the book and we will be going over if we got these predictions right, how we felt about the ending. Overall, did we love the book? However, we won't really go over our full rating because there will be a part 3 to One Dark Window, which is when we will go over our full book review because we will be re-listening to our voice notes that Jillian and I send to each other while we are reading in real life time. If you didn't know, that's how Jillian and I read books. We read the same book at the same time, and we constantly give each other updates via voice note. So we will string all those together. That'll be part 3 of One Dark Window. And otherwise, see you back soon.
Those are my thoughts. Bye.
Thank you so much for listening. We also want to be your long distance book bestie. You can find this podcast on all your favorite listening platforms. You can watch us on YouTube at Those Are My Thoughts Podcast. Follow us on Instagram, My Thoughts Pod, on TikTok, mythoughts.pod.
We'd love to hear your thoughts and book recommendations. Email us at thosearemythoughtspod@gmail.com. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen. We love you. See you next time. Bye.